welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at a really challenging set of sources.
We really are.
We're trying to synthesize two very different narratives that are apparently colliding right now.
Right. On one hand, you have concrete, high-level U.S. government executive orders, real-world stuff.
And on the other, you have these incredibly specific, ancient prophetic blueprints that talk about end times enforcement.
And our mission here is to really unpack the details, not just the headlines. We want to show you the engineering, the geopolitics, and why these sources are claiming that all this rapid technological change is actually fulfilling some very old prophecies.
The thing that's so startling, and this is the hook, is the precision. I mean, we're not talking about vague trends. We're mapping an executive order signed just days ago directly onto prophetic timelines.
And it all begins with something called the Genesis mission.
Okay, so let's start there. What are the hard facts? What do the government sources tell us?
So the anchor for this whole analysis is the Genesis mission launch. It was officially signed into existence by President Trump on November 24th, 2025.
And this wasn't just some small regulatory update.
No, not at all. This is a Department of Energy, a DOE-led initiative. And they are explicitly comparing its scope, its ambition, to the Manhattan Project.
And the Apollo program.
And the Apollo program. I mean, the scale is just, it's immense.
The sources say it unites 17 national laboratories.
Right, mobilizing something like 40,000 scientists. But the key is that it integrates the government's entire supercomputing infrastructure, all of its federal data sets.
Into a single unified AI platform.
Exactly. The stated goal, on paper, is to guarantee American scientific and economic dominance.
To compete with China and Russia.
Right, in everything from biotech and energy to national defense. But the fact that the Department of Energy is leading it, not NASA or the DoD, that's significant.
Why is that?
It suggests the real focus is on fundamental scientific acceleration, resource management, all driven by this one massive AI.
Okay, so let's pause on that. We've had scientific leaps before. The printing press, the internet. Why does this centralized AI matter so much more from a prophetic standpoint, according to these sources?
That's the absolute core of their argument. They point directly to Daniel 12.4.
Which says?
It talks about the time of the end when knowledge shall increase. And the sources argue that previous leaps, like the Industrial Revolution, were sort of linear. They happened over decades.
And this is different.
This is exponential. The Genesis mission's AI platform is designed for an exponential, centralized leap. It performs trillions of calculations a second. It can compress years of human research into just a few hours.
So the increase in knowledge is happening at a speed we can't even comprehend.
Precisely. And that speed allows for something new. The merger of all human knowledge with machine intelligence. This creates what the sources call centralized intelligence.
And that's a system that's too fast, too complex for any human to effectively control.
It operates beyond any normal checks and balances. It's just too big and too fast.
Okay, and this is where the corporate angle becomes so critical. To build something this big, the government can't do it alone.
Not even close. They have to rely on the absolute cutting edge of private sector tech.
Which
means, by definition, the Genesis mission concentrates incredible power and wealth into just a handful of companies.
So if the government's new AI brain needs the best chips,
it has to go to NVIDIA.
If it needs the cloud computing and the AI model,
it has to be Microsoft through OpenAI. And then you have Google for the deep research, Amazon for the raw computing power, IBM for quantum.
You're talking about a complete dependency on maybe 4 or 5 massive corporations.
Exactly. And not just the companies, but the people who lead them. Individuals like Elon Musk with xAI and SpaceX, or Bill Gates with his deep ties to biotech.
So these unelected figures gain just unbelievable influence over this new centralized scientific brain of the country.
Yes, and this rapid consolidation of power, the sources argue, is the foundation for the figure the Bible calls the false prophet.
That's the bridge in the material.
It is. The false prophet from Revelation 13 is described as looking gentle. It says, 2 horns like a lamb, but speaking like a dragon.
Meaning he doesn't rule through military force.
No, he rules through deception, technological, spiritual deception. The sources suggest this figure is a kind of technological priest.
Less of a traditional religious leader, more of someone who merges obedience to a system with a kind of spirituality.
A religion of progress or safety, facilitated by technology. And this is where the AI becomes absolutely crucial.
Because the false prophet's main role is
to give breath to the image of the beast.
And the sources don't see that image as a literal statue.
Not at all. They see it as a global, intelligent, automated system. It's AI, facial recognition, digital ID, an infrastructure of surveillance and enforcement that can identify dissenters and, well, automate persecution.
That makes perfect sense. The Genesis mission is the brain. The corporate giants provide the hardware, but for global enforcement, you need global identification.
You do. And that brings us to human microchips.
Yeah.
You have to realize this is not science fiction.
This has been a reality for years now.
Since about 2015,
Yeah.
the sources really highlight Sweden as a key social laboratory for this.
Why Sweden?
It comes down to two things: trust and convenience. Sweden is moving towards a cashless society, and people there have a very high level of trust in their government and institutions.
So they volunteer for this.
Thousands have. For train tickets, for
Yeah.
office access, it's sold as the ultimate convenience. No keys, no cards, no passwords. It conditions people to see implantation as progress, as inclusion.
Okay, so that's the cultural buy-in. But then you have Germany and Belgium, which are more focused on the corporate and administrative side.
Correct. In German engineering firms, chips are for efficiency, access to secure labs, payments in the cafeteria. In Belgium, around the EU headquarters, they've used them to streamline government administrative functions.
So you're demonstrating that the technology can be seamlessly integrated into the machinery of a modern state.
And that's how you build the three pillars you need for the Mark of the Beast system described in Revelation: implantable tech, centralized identity, and practical integration into daily financial life, all to control who can buy or sell.
The sources stress that the function of the mark is just practical control.
Yeah.
It exploits basic human needs.
Exactly. The chip creates the inescapable structure.
Yeah.
All your data purchasing, medical, personal, in one database, ready for automated enforcement.
But how do you get a whole generation to accept that? Total digital control over everything.
The argument is that it won't be forced on a generation that's resisting. It will be offered to a generation that's been conditioned to accept it.
As the solution to a crisis.
And the only solution: imagine a total global financial collapse or another pandemic. A system that offers security, stability, access to food and money. It would be seen as a salvation.
Okay, we have to pivot now to the really charged geopolitical and religious interpretations in these sources, and we need to be clear we're reporting impartially on their arguments.
Of course.
Let's start with their theory about the identity of the Antichrist.
The material goes deep into Daniel 11, which describes a final king who will honor the God of forces and won't regard the God of his fathers or the desire of women.
And the sources connect this figure directly to the Islamic figure of the Al-Mahdi, the 12th Imam. Can you explain that belief for anyone unfamiliar?
In brief, many Muslims believe the Al-Mahdi will appear at the end of time, rule for 7 years, fill the world with justice, and, this is critical, defeat their version of a false messiah who they believe is Jesus Christ.
So he's expected to bring 7 years of peace.
Exactly, which the courses connect to Daniel 8.25, which says the end times ruler will, by peace, destroy many.
But wait, that's a huge theological conflict. How can the Al-Mahdi be the Antichrist if he's supposed to defeat Jesus when the Antichrist is supposed to be defeated by Jesus?
That is the ultimate deception, according to these sources. The figure presents himself as a global savior, the Al-Mahdi bringing peace, but is in fact the Antichrist from Daniel and Revelation, uniting the world under this technological system we've been describing.
And what about the mark itself? The sources claim that 666 is a misinterpretation.
This is one of their most specific claims. They propose the actual mark will be a stylized Aramaic symbol.
And what does it look like?
It's said to resemble the Bismillah, which means, in the name of Allah, crossed with swords.
And the choice of Aramaic is significant.
Very. They argue it points to the region the Antichrist will arise from. But the symbol itself signifies submission to a system that, as described in Revelation 20.4, enforces its rule by beheading those who dissent.
Wow. Okay, so beyond the huge technological framework, the sources also point to current societal conditions as warning signs.
Yes, they do. They reference 2 Timothy 3. It describes a moral collapse where people are boastful, prideful, lovers of themselves.
And the argument is that social media has amplified that on a global scale.
I mean, platforms like Instagram and TikTok have created the largest, most efficient engine for self-glorification in human history. It perfectly matches the description.
This then leads to the issue of censorship, which they see as a kind of training ground.
Precisely. The concern isn't just moral decline, it's that these centralized platforms are now the gatekeepers of speech. And they are already censoring the Christian gospel, labeling it hate speech.
It prepares the public to accept a single, centrally defined moral code.
One that is technologically enforced. It gets the world ready for the false prophet's authority.
So, to bring this all together, on one side we have this dual reality. The Genesis AI project is real. It's happening. It's concentrating power at a level we've never seen before.
And at the exact same time, that technological acceleration is perfectly mapping onto an ancient prophetic blueprint for an end-times system.
A system that requires centralized intelligence, corporate monopolies, and universal ID to control who can buy or sell.
The sources are clear. The Antichrist system needs three things: implantable technology, centralized identity management, and global financial controls.
And these three pillars aren't just advancing on their own.
No, we are watching them connect right now. Through government initiatives, corporate partnerships, and voluntary public programs, the system is becoming indispensable.
Which leaves us with a really provocative final thought for you. The infrastructure for total technological and financial control. It isn't coming. It's here. It's operational. And it's being normalized as convenience and progress.
So, given that, what kind of global crisis, an economic collapse, a world war, another pandemic, what would be so severe that our generation would voluntarily embrace complete digital identification as the only solution, the only way to achieve safety or stability or inclusion?
The sources suggest the world is being prepared not for a fight, but for a choice.
A choice where survival seems to depend on accepting the system, making the final decision feel less like resistance and more like simple necessity.